I sat across from Marcus Rothwell in the mahogany-paneled boardroom, my leather briefcase containing 5 years of work resting on my lap. The quantum encryption patent inside could revolutionize cybersecurity forever. Marcus had been my thesis advisor at Stanford, my mentor, the man who encouraged me to pursue this breakthrough. Now he was CEO of Nextech Industries, and I believed we were discussing partnership terms. Without warning, his face turned crimson. He slammed his fist on the polished table. "Your patent is worthless! Get out!" He screamed, spittle flying across the room. Security guards appeared instantly, their hands already reaching for my arms. As they escorted me toward the exit, I clutched my briefcase tighter, my mind reeling from this sudden betrayal. The fluorescent lights in the Nextech lobby felt harsh against my tear-stained cheeks as the security guards pushed me through the revolving doors. Employees I had known for months stared from behind their desks, some with confusion, others with what looked like pity. My old Honda Civic sat lonely in the visitor parking space, a stark contrast to the Teslas and BMWs surrounding it. During the drive home to my small apartment in Palo Alto, I replayed every moment of the meeting. Marcus had seemed normal when I arrived, greeting me with his usual warm smile and asking about my weekend. We had discussed the technical specifications of my quantum encryption algorithm, and he had nodded appreciatively at my explanations. Then something shifted. His expression hardened when I mentioned maintaining joint ownership of the patent. Back at my apartment, I called my boyfriend Tom Rodriguez, a corporate lawyer who worked downtown. "He threw me out like I was nobody," I told him through sobs. 5 years of work, Tom. 5 years of sleeping 3 hours a night, living on ramen, maxing out credit cards to buy equipment. Tom's voice was gentle but concerned. "Yvonne, I warned you about licensing deals. Remember what I said about getting everything in writing?" I had met Marcus during my PhD program at Stanford, where he served as my thesis advisor. Even then, he had shown intense interest in my research into quantum cryptography. While other professors dismissed the field as too theoretical, Marcus encouraged me to push boundaries. He helped me secure lab time, introduced me to industry contacts, and even wrote recommendation letters when I applied for research grants. After graduating, I spent 5 years in my garage laboratory converting the theoretical framework into practical applications. My breakthrough came 18 months ago when I successfully created an encryption method that would be virtually unbreakable by current computing standards. The implications were staggering. Government agencies, financial institutions, and tech companies would pay billions for this level of security. Marcus had stayed in touch throughout my research, checking in every few months to hear about my progress. When I finally achieved the breakthrough, he was the first person I called. He congratulated me enthusiastically and suggested we meet to discuss commercialization opportunities. That meeting led to today's disaster. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Sarah Brennan, my former lab partner who now worked at the patent office. "Saw the news about your meeting. Call me immediately. Something strange is happening with your patent filings." When I called Sarah, her voice carried an urgency I had never heard before. "Yvonne, someone has been submitting additional documentation on your patent. Documents I never received from you." My stomach dropped. "What kind of documents?" "Licensing agreements, transfer forms, even some technical modifications, all bearing your signature." I gripped the phone tighter. "Sarah, I never signed any licensing agreements with Nextech. I never signed anything beyond the original patent application. That's what I was afraid of. These signatures look authentic, but the timestamps don't match your submission records. Someone has been forging your authorization." The room seemed to spin around me. Marcus hadn't just rejected my partnership proposal. He had been planning to steal my patent outright. The signatures Sarah described could only have come from someone with access to my original paperwork, someone who had studied my handwriting carefully, someone I trusted completely. "There's more." Sarah continued. I did some digging after seeing these suspicious filings. Marcus submitted a request last week to transfer primary ownership of your patent to Nextech Industries, claiming you signed over rights as payment for laboratory equipment and research funding. That's completely false. I never received funding from Nextech. I paid for everything myself. I know. That's why I flagged it for review. But Yvonne, if these documents are processed before my investigation concludes, you could lose all rights to your own invention. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. The man who had mentored me, who had encouraged my dreams, who had celebrated my successes, was systematically destroying my life's work. The betrayal cut deeper than any business dispute. This was personal. Tom arrived an hour later with Chinese takeout and a briefcase full of legal documents. I did some research on Nextech's recent financial situation, he said, spreading papers across my kitchen table. Marcus is in serious trouble. The company has been hemorrhaging money for 2 years. Failed product launches, canceled contracts, mounting debt. He pulled out a financial report. Look at this. They're carrying $70 million in debt, and their primary investors are threatening to pull funding. Marcus needs a major win to survive. But what does that have to do with my patent? Everything. I found mention of a potential acquisition deal with TechGlobal Corporation. $900 million for Nextech's assets, including all intellectual property. Your patent would be the crown jewel of that deal. The pieces fell into place with horrifying clarity. Marcus hadn't just decided to steal my patent on impulse. This had been planned for months, possibly longer. He had cultivated our relationship, gained my trust, and positioned himself to claim ownership at the crucial moment. My phone rang again. The caller ID showed Nextech's legal department. Miss Chen, a cold voice said when I answered. I didn't bother correcting the name mix-up. This is Attorney Williams from Nextech Industries. We're calling to inform you that you are in violation of multiple confidentiality agreements and trade secret protections. Any further contact with our intellectual property will result in immediate legal action. What are you talking about? I own that patent. According to our records, you signed over all rights to the quantum encryption technology in exchange for research support and laboratory access. We have documentation proving this transfer was completed 6 months ago. My hands shook as I gripped the phone. Those documents are forgeries. I never signed anything like that. We strongly advise you to consult with legal counsel before making such accusations. Any public statements claiming ownership of Nextech property will be considered defamatory. The line went dead. Tom looked at me with growing concern. They're moving fast. Whatever Marcus is planning, he needs to solidify his claim before the TechGlobal deal closes. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marcus's face contorting with rage, heard his voice screaming that my life's work was worthless. By morning, I had made a decision. If Marcus wanted a fight, I would give him one. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was up against. The next morning, I met Tom at a coffee shop near the courthouse. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, suggesting he had slept as little as I had. He spread legal documents across our corner table, speaking in hushed tones despite the early morning crowd. I spent all night researching Marcus's background, he said, pointing to a thick folder. What I found is disturbing. Nextech isn't just in debt. They're facing bankruptcy within 60 days unless something dramatic changes. He pulled out financial statements. Look at these numbers. They borrowed $50 million against future patent revenues 6 months ago. The loan documents specifically mention quantum encryption technology as collateral. My coffee grew cold as I absorbed the implications. He was planning this before we even had our first commercialization meeting. It gets worse. I found 3 other cases where inventors claimed Marcus stole their technology. All the cases were settled out of court with confidentiality agreements. The pattern is identical. He befriends struggling inventors, offers mentorship and support, then claims ownership through forged documents when their technology becomes valuable. A new voice interrupted our conversation. Excuse me, are you Yvonne Chen? I looked up to see a middle-aged woman with graying hair and tired eyes. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. I'm Janet Walsh, Marcus Rothwell's executive assistant. Or I was until yesterday. I need to speak with you about what happened at Nextech. Tom instinctively moved closer. This could be a setup, Yvonne. Janet shook her head. I understand your suspicion, but I'm here because I can't stay silent anymore. I've been watching Marcus destroy people for 2 years. I have information you need to hear. She sat down without invitation, glancing around nervously. I was ordered to destroy documents related to your patent last month. When I refused, Marcus threatened to fire me and ruin my references. I'm 53 years old with 2 kids in college. I couldn't afford to lose my job. What kind of documents? I asked. Original correspondence between you and Marcus. Records of your laboratory visits. Most importantly, the real timeline of your patent development. Everything that would prove you developed the technology independently. Janet reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive. I couldn't destroy everything. I made copies before shredding the originals. This contains emails where Marcus discusses forging your signature and backdating licensing agreements. My hands trembled as I took the drive. Why are you helping me now? Because yesterday I watched him scream at you like you were nothing. You trusted him just like the others. But unlike the others, you're still fighting. I couldn't live with myself if I stayed quiet while he stole everything from you. Tom plugged the drive into his laptop, and we spent the next hour reviewing the contents. The evidence was damning. Email after email showed Marcus planning every detail of the theft. He had researched my financial situation, identifying my vulnerability. He had practiced my signature using samples from university documents. Most shocking of all, he had already spent $30 million of the TechGlobal advance money gambling on high-risk investments that all failed. There's something else, Janet said quietly. Marcus hired private investigators to gather information on your personal life. They've been following you for weeks, looking for anything they could use to discredit you. I felt violated in ways I hadn't imagined possible. What kind of information? Medical records, financial statements, social media activity. He wanted to build a case that you're mentally unstable, that you don't understand the value of your own invention. The plan was to have you declared incompetent if the forged documents didn't work. Tom closed the laptop, his jaw set with determination. This is criminal conspiracy, fraud, and harassment. We have enough evidence to file charges. But Janet's expression remained troubled. There's more. The TechGlobal deal includes a clause that would transfer all patent disputes to private arbitration. Once that contract is signed, you'll lose access to federal courts. Marcus scheduled the signing ceremony for tomorrow morning. My heart sank. We had discovered the conspiracy, but we might be too late to stop it. Is there any way to delay the signing? Not unless something catastrophic happens to derail the deal. TechGlobal has been planning this acquisition for months. Their board meets tomorrow at 9 a.m. to authorize final payment. As we left the coffee shop, I noticed a black sedan following us at a distance. Janet was right about the surveillance. Marcus wasn't just stealing my patent. He was watching my every move, anticipating my response. Back at my apartment, my phone rang constantly. Reporters had somehow learned about the dispute and wanted statements. Marcus's lawyers left threatening voicemails every hour. My landlord called to say someone had inquired about my lease, claiming to be conducting a background check for potential employers. The pressure was suffocating, but it also clarified my resolve. Marcus had underestimated me before assuming I would accept his rejection quietly. He was making the same mistake now, believing that intimidation would silence me. That evening, Sarah called with more disturbing news. The patent office received an emergency petition this afternoon. Marcus is claiming you stole the quantum encryption technology from his company's research division. He submitted falsified employment records showing you worked for Nextech during your graduate studies. That's completely fabricated. I was never employed by Nextech. I know that, but the petition requests an immediate investigation and temporary suspension of your patent rights pending review. If approved, you would lose all legal standing to challenge the TechGlobal deal. I felt the walls closing in from every direction. Marcus wasn't just stealing my patent. He was systematically destroying my credibility, my financial stability, and my future. The man I had trusted as a mentor had become my greatest enemy. But as I sat in my small apartment surrounded by evidence of his crimes, I realized something important. Marcus's elaborate scheme revealed his desperation. He wouldn't need forged documents, private investigators, and legal harassment if his position was strong. He was afraid of me, afraid of what I could do if I fought back with everything I had. The next morning would determine whether 5 years of work would disappear forever or whether justice could prevail against corruption. I had less than 18 hours to find a way to stop a $900 million deal that would legitimize the theft of my life's greatest achievement. Janet's flash drive contained the evidence I needed, but evidence alone wouldn't be enough. I needed a strategy that would expose Marcus's crimes dramatically enough to derail the TechGlobal signing before it became irreversible. At 6 in the morning, I met Janet at a 24-hour diner in San Jose, far from Nextech's corporate surveillance network. She looked exhausted, her usually perfect makeup smudged and her hands shaking as she stirred her coffee. "I barely escaped the building last night," she said quietly. Marcus discovered someone had accessed his email server. He's interrogating everyone with administrative access. "Are you in immediate danger?" "I don't know. I've been with the company for 8 years. I know where all the bodies are buried, not just yours. If Marcus realizes I'm the leak, he'll do everything possible to discredit me." Janet pulled a manila envelope from her oversized purse. "Before we go any further, you need to understand the full scope of what we're facing. Marcus isn't just a desperate CEO trying to save his company. He's been running systematic fraud operations for years." She spread photographs across the table. Bank statements, wire transfer records, and correspondence with offshore accounts. He's been embezzling funds from multiple sources: investor money, employee pension funds, even research grants from the Department of Defense. My stomach turned as I reviewed the documents. How much money are we talking about? Over $80 million in the past 3 years. The quantum encryption theft is just his latest scheme. He needs the TechGlobal money to cover the embezzlement before auditors discover the missing funds. The diner's fluorescent lighting cast harsh shadows across Janet's face as she continued. "There's something else. Marcus has been working with a network of corrupt patent attorneys and judges. They've been manipulating intellectual property cases across Silicon Valley for huge fees." She handed me a list of names I recognized from news articles about patent disputes. "These people have been systematically transferring valuable patents from individual inventors to large corporations. Your case isn't unique. It's part of a much larger criminal enterprise." The revelation was overwhelming. I had thought Marcus was simply a desperate man making bad choices. Instead, he was a central figure in an organized conspiracy that had probably destroyed hundreds of inventors' lives. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because you're the first person with both the evidence and the courage to expose the entire network. The other inventors were either bought off or intimidated into silence. But Marcus made a mistake with you. He got greedy and sloppy." Janet pulled out her phone and played an audio recording. Marcus's voice was clearly audible, discussing plans to have me eliminated from the equation permanently if legal intimidation failed to silence me. The implications sent chills down my spine. He recorded this yesterday after discovering the email breach. He doesn't know I have recording equipment in his office. Tom arrived at 7:30 looking grim after spending the night researching the people Janet had identified. "This conspiracy reaches much higher than we imagined," he said, sliding into the booth beside me. "I found connections to federal judges, patent office officials, and executives at a dozen major corporations." "What does that mean for stopping the TechGlobal deal?" "It means we can't rely on normal legal channels. Too many people in positions of authority are compromised. We need to expose everything publicly and simultaneously to prevent cover-ups. Janet's phone buzzed with an urgent text message. Her face went pale as she read it. Marcus just moved the TechGlobal signing to 11 a.m. today, 3 hours earlier than scheduled. Why would he do that? Someone tipped him off about our meeting. He's accelerating the timeline to close the deal before we can intervene. The diner suddenly felt exposed and dangerous. If Marcus knew about our alliance with Janet, he would stop at nothing to prevent us from disrupting his plans. We needed to act immediately or lose any chance of success. Tom made a series of phone calls while Janet and I gathered the evidence. He contacted Dr. Sarah Brennan at the patent office requesting an emergency review of the fraudulent documents. He called Detective Ray Cooper, who had been investigating white-collar crime in Silicon Valley for 20 years. Most importantly, he reached out to investigative journalist Patricia King at the San Francisco Chronicle, who specialized in corporate corruption stories. Detective Cooper can't make arrests without federal authorization because the crimes cross state lines, Tom explained after finishing his calls. But he can coordinate with the FBI if we provide enough evidence to trigger their interest. What about Patricia King? She's interested, but she needs more than documents. She wants recorded confessions or live testimony to make the story credible. Janet looked thoughtful. I might be able to help with that. Marcus scheduled a conference call with the TechGlobal executives at 10 a.m. to finalize details. If I can delay leaving the building until then, I might be able to record the conversation. That's incredibly dangerous, I said. If he suspects you're working against him, he could have you arrested on false charges or worse. I've been complicit in his crimes for 2 years by staying silent. This is my chance to do the right thing regardless of the consequences. We spent the next hour developing a coordinated plan. Janet would return to Nextech and attempt to record Marcus's confession during the TechGlobal call. Tom would prepare emergency legal filings to submit the moment we had sufficient evidence. I would coordinate with Detective Cooper and Patricia King to ensure simultaneous exposure through law enforcement and media channels. The plan required precise timing and a significant amount of luck. If any element failed, Marcus would complete the deal and gain legal protection from prosecution through TechGlobal's arbitration clauses. At 9:15, Janet stood to leave for what might be her final day at Nextech. If something happens to me, promise you'll keep fighting. Too many inventors have been destroyed by this conspiracy. It has to stop. I watched her walk to her car, a middle-aged woman with graying hair and tired eyes risking everything to help someone she barely knew. Her courage inspired me to push past my own fears about confronting Marcus's power and connections. By 10 a.m., I was positioned in my Honda Civic across the street from Nextech headquarters, watching employees arrive for what they believed was a routine day. None of them knew that their CEO was about to close a deal built on theft, fraud, and systematic corruption. My phone buzzed with a text from Janet. Recording in progress. Pray for us all. The next hour would determine whether justice could triumph over a criminal conspiracy that had operated in shadows for years. Everything I had worked for, everything I believed about right and wrong came down to the next 60 minutes. At 10:15, my phone exploded with activity. Detective Cooper called first, his voice urgent and professional. Miss Chen, we just received your evidence package. This is much bigger than patent theft. We're coordinating with the FBI's white-collar crime division. How quickly can you act? That depends on what additional evidence your source provides in the next 30 minutes. If we can establish criminal conspiracy, we can freeze assets and halt the TechGlobal transaction, Patricia King called seconds later. I've been reviewing the documents you provided. This story could expose corruption throughout Silicon Valley's patent system, but I need confirmation that your source is reliable and the evidence is authentic. Janet Walsh has been inside Nextech for 8 years. She has access to Marcus's private communications and financial records. If anyone can provide proof of his crimes, it's her. Where is she now? Inside the building, attempting to record Marcus's conference call with TechGlobal executives. Patricia paused. That's incredibly dangerous. If Marcus discovers her betrayal, she could face retaliation or worse. Corporate whistleblowers have been known to disappear when the stakes are this high. Her warning sent ice through my veins. I had encouraged Janet to risk everything based on my desire for justice. If something happened to her because of my crusade against Marcus, I would never forgive myself. Tom arrived with a briefcase full of legal documents, his usually calm demeanor replaced by intense focus. I've prepared emergency injunctions for 3 different courts. The moment we have recorded evidence of Marcus's confession, we can file simultaneously to prevent any possibility of judicial corruption. What if the recordings aren't clear enough for legal use? Then we'll have to find another way to stop the deal. But Yvonne, you need to understand something. Even if we succeed in exposing Marcus's crimes, the damage to your reputation might be permanent. Patent disputes become public record. Your name will be associated with this controversy forever. I had considered that possibility throughout the sleepless night. Fighting Marcus meant sacrificing my privacy and potentially my future in the technology industry. But allowing him to steal my patent would mean surrendering my life's work and enabling him to destroy other inventors. Some things are more important than reputation, I said. If I don't fight this, who will? At 10:45, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Miss Chen, this is David Kim from TechGlobal Corporation. I'm calling to inform you that we're aware of disputes regarding the patent technology included in our acquisition of Nextech Industries. My heart pounded. What kind of disputes? We received an anonymous email this morning containing allegations of intellectual property theft. While we cannot comment on specific legal matters, TechGlobal takes such accusations very seriously. Are you proceeding with the acquisition? We've delayed the signing ceremony pending a review of all patent documentation. If irregularities are confirmed, we will withdraw our offer immediately. I nearly dropped the phone. Someone had contacted TechGlobal directly bypassing Marcus's control over the narrative. Can you tell me who sent the anonymous email? I'm not authorized to share that information. However, I can tell you that the email included detailed documentation supporting the allegations. We're conducting our own investigation to verify the claims. After hanging up, I called Tom immediately. TechGlobal delayed the signing. Someone sent them evidence about the patent theft. That's incredible news, but who would have access to both the evidence and TechGlobal's contact information? The answer came in a text from Janet. Sent everything to TechGlobal board. Marcus discovered my recording equipment. Security is looking for me. Meet at courthouse if you don't hear from me in 1 hour. My blood ran cold. Janet had sacrificed her safety to expose Marcus's crimes, but now she was trapped inside a building controlled by a desperate criminal who had already proven willing to use violence to protect his interests. Tom grabbed my arm. We need to get to the courthouse immediately. If Janet has been compromised, we might be the only ones with enough evidence to stop Marcus from covering up his crimes. The drive downtown felt endless despite taking only 15 minutes. Every red light, every slow-moving truck, every minor delay might have been giving Marcus time to destroy evidence or silence the witnesses who could expose his conspiracy. Detective Cooper met us in the courthouse lobby, flanked by 2 FBI agents in dark suits. We've been monitoring communications at Nextech since receiving your evidence. Marcus Rothwell just ordered building security to detain Janet Walsh for alleged theft of company property. Is she in danger? We don't know, but we have enough evidence to obtain search warrants for both Nextech's offices and Marcus's personal residences. The investigation is expanding to include the entire patent fraud network you identified. Patricia King arrived with a camera crew setting up equipment in the courthouse hallway. This story is going live in 1 hour, regardless of what happens with the legal proceedings. The public deserves to know how extensively the patent system has been corrupted. At 11:30, my phone buzzed with another call from David Kim at TechGlobal. Miss Chen, Our review has confirmed serious irregularities in the patent documentation. We're withdrawing our acquisition offer effective immediately. What about Marcus? Mr. Rothwell has been informed that TechGlobal no longer considers Nextech a viable acquisition target. We're also reporting our findings to appropriate regulatory authorities. Tom pumped his fist in victory, but I felt only exhaustion. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but Janet was still missing, and Marcus remained free to destroy evidence or retaliate against anyone who had opposed him. Detective Cooper's radio crackled with urgent updates. Units responding to Nextech report that Janet Walsh escaped the building through a service exit. She's currently in protective custody providing testimony about the full scope of the criminal conspiracy. Relief flooded through me so powerfully that I had to sit down on a courthouse bench. Janet was safe, the deal was stopped, and law enforcement was finally taking action against Marcus's crimes. But as Patricia King began her live broadcast from the courthouse steps, describing the systematic theft of intellectual property throughout Silicon Valley, I realized our victory was only the beginning. Exposing Marcus's crimes would require months of investigation, legal proceedings, and testimony that would consume my life for the foreseeable future. The woman who had walked into Nextech's boardroom yesterday morning believing in mentorship and partnership was gone forever. In her place stood someone who understood that fighting for justice required sacrificing everything comfortable and familiar about life. Marcus's greatest mistake wasn't stealing my patent. It was teaching me how powerful one person could be when they refused to accept injustice quietly. The FBI raid on Nextech headquarters began at 2 p.m. just as Marcus was attempting to convene an emergency board meeting to address the collapsed TechGlobal deal. I watched from across the street as federal agents in bulletproof vests escorted employees from the building, while forensic accountants carried boxes of financial records to waiting vehicles. Detective Cooper provided updates via phone as the operation unfolded. We found evidence of embezzlement totaling over $100 million. Marcus was using company funds to cover gambling debts and failed investments. Your patent theft was just one part of a much larger financial fraud scheme. Where is Marcus now? In custody. He was arrested while attempting to delete files from his personal computer. He demanded a lawyer immediately and refused to answer questions. Patricia King's news crew broadcast live footage of Marcus being led away in handcuffs, his usual confident demeanor replaced by the hollow stare of a man watching his empire collapse. Seeing him reduced to a common criminal provided some satisfaction, but I felt no joy in his downfall. Janet called from the FBI field office, where she was providing detailed testimony about years of criminal activity. They want me to testify before a federal grand jury about the entire patent theft network, she said, her voice stronger than I had heard it in days. This investigation could expose corruption involving dozens of companies and hundreds of stolen patents. Are you willing to do that? I've been silent for too long. If my testimony can help other inventors get justice, I'll do whatever it takes. Tom arrived with news about the legal implications of Marcus's arrest. The criminal charges automatically void any patent claims based on fraudulent documentation. Your ownership rights are fully restored, and you can pursue civil damages for the economic harm you suffered. What about the other inventors Marcus victimized? They can now file claims based on the evidence discovered in the FBI raid. Some of those patents could be worth millions of dollars. As afternoon turned to evening, the full scope of Marcus's criminal enterprise became clear. The FBI had identified 17 companies involved in the patent theft network, including several major corporations that had knowingly purchased stolen intellectual property. 3 federal judges were under investigation for accepting bribes to rule in favor of patent thieves. Dr. Sarah Brennan called with updates from the Patent Office. We're conducting a comprehensive review of every patent dispute handled by the attorneys and judges identified in the investigation. This could result in hundreds of patent ownership reversals. The magnitude of the corruption was staggering, but it also explained why Marcus had been so confident in his scheme. He wasn't operating alone or improvising desperate solutions. He was part of an established criminal network that had successfully stolen intellectual property for years without serious challenge. My phone rang with an unfamiliar number displaying a Washington, D.C. area code. Miss Chen, this is Congressman Bradley from the House Intellectual Property Subcommittee. We're convening emergency hearings on patent system corruption based on today's arrests. Would you be willing to testify about your experience? What would that involve? Public testimony about how the theft occurred and recommendations for preventing similar crimes. Your case has become a symbol of everything wrong with current patent protections. I agreed to testify, understanding that this decision would make me a public figure in debates about intellectual property reform. Privacy and anonymity were small prices to pay for ensuring other inventors wouldn't face similar betrayals. That evening, Tom and I had dinner at a small restaurant near my apartment, our first quiet moment since the crisis began. You realize your life will never be the same, he said gently. You'll be known as the inventor who exposed patent system corruption. Is that necessarily bad? Not bad, but different. You'll receive speaking requests, consulting offers, interview requests. Some people will see you as a hero, others as a troublemaker who disrupted established business practices. I considered his words while watching news coverage of the FBI raids on my phone. Marcus's mugshot appeared alongside headlines about corruption throughout Silicon Valley's patent system. My own photograph taken from my university graduation was displayed as the inventor whose courage exposed systematic fraud. I never wanted to be famous, I admitted. I just wanted to protect my work and pursue my research. You can still do that, but you'll be doing it as someone who proved that individuals can fight back against powerful institutions and win. The next morning brought calls from patent attorneys representing other inventors victimized by Marcus's network. They wanted my help identifying stolen patents and providing testimony about his methods. Each conversation revealed another tragedy. A biomedical engineer whose cancer treatment patent was stolen, resulting in delayed treatments for thousands of patients. A software developer whose security algorithm was appropriated by a defense contractor, costing taxpayers millions of dollars. Janet visited my apartment to thank me for encouraging her to speak out. I've been offered a position with the FBI's white-collar crime unit, she said. They want someone with inside knowledge of corporate fraud to help investigate similar cases. Will you take it? Yes. I spent 8 years watching Marcus destroy people's lives. This is my chance to help victims instead of enabling criminals. Patricia King's follow-up article appeared in newspapers nationwide, describing the systematic corruption of America's patent system and the brave individuals who risked everything to expose it. The article ended with a quote from me. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is trust the wrong person, but the most important thing you can do is fight back when that trust is betrayed. 2 weeks after Marcus's arrest, I received an unexpected visitor. David Kim from TechGlobal knocked on my apartment door with a business proposal that would change my life forever. TechGlobal would like to license your quantum encryption technology legitimately, he said, presenting a contract worth $15 million over 5 years. We were impressed by your courage in exposing the corruption that nearly deceived us. Why should I trust another large corporation? Because this time you have legal protections, public attention, and the knowledge to recognize exploitation before it happens. You're no longer the naive inventor who trusted Marcus Rothwell. He was right. The woman who had sat in Nextech's boardroom 2 weeks ago no longer existed. In her place stood someone who understood that integrity and courage were the only reliable defenses against corruption. 3 months after Marcus's arrest, I found myself testifying before Congress in a hearing room packed with cameras, reporters, and patent reform advocates. The House Intellectual Property Subcommittee had transformed my personal ordeal into a symbol of systematic problems requiring legislative solutions. Miss Chen, Congressman Bradley asked, in your opinion, how many other inventors have suffered similar theft of their intellectual property? I looked at the gallery filled with inventors whose patents had been stolen by Marcus's network. Based on FBI investigations, at least 200 inventors lost their patents to this single criminal conspiracy, but this represents only one network in one region. Similar operations likely exist throughout the country. The hearing room buzzed with murmurs as representatives absorbed the implications. During breaks, inventors approached me with their own stories of betrayal and theft. A grandmother whose energy-efficient light bulb design was stolen by a major manufacturer. A veteran whose prosthetic limb technology was appropriated by a defense contractor. Each story reinforced the urgent need for reform. Janet testified about the internal operations of patent theft networks, describing how criminals identified vulnerable inventors and systematically exploited legal loopholes. These aren't crimes of opportunity, she explained. They're sophisticated operations involving lawyers, judges, and corporate executives working together to steal billions of dollars worth of intellectual property. Dr. Sarah Brennan presented patent office statistics showing suspicious patterns in hundreds of ownership transfers. We've identified irregularities in over 800 patent disputes handled by the attorneys and judges connected to this network. Many legitimate inventors may have lost their rights through fraudulent proceedings. The media coverage transformed my personal story into a national conversation about innovation and justice. Major newspapers editorialized about the need for patent reform. Technology blogs debated whether current intellectual property laws adequately protected individual inventors. Law schools added my case to their curricula on ethics and professional responsibility. Tom and I were married in a small ceremony attended by the people who had helped expose Marcus's crimes. Janet served as matron of honor, having successfully transitioned to her new career investigating corporate fraud. Dr. Sarah Brennan officiated, having been ordained online specifically for our wedding. Detective Cooper provided security, joking that our guest list read like a witness protection roster. The TechGlobal licensing deal provided financial security I had never imagined possible. Instead of struggling to pay for basic equipment, I could fund comprehensive research into quantum encryption applications. More importantly, the publicity surrounding my case attracted other inventors seeking advice about protecting their intellectual property. I established the Inventor Justice Foundation with Janet as executive director, providing legal support for inventors facing patent theft. Our first year, we helped recover stolen patents worth over $50 million. Law firms began offering pro bono services through our foundation, creating a network of attorneys dedicated to protecting individual inventors. Marcus's criminal trial began 6 months after his arrest, drawing national attention to corporate corruption in the technology industry. He pleaded guilty to 93 felony counts, including fraud, embezzlement, and racketeering. During his sentencing hearing, he was required to face testimony from every inventor whose life he had destroyed. When my turn came to address the court, I spoke not just about my own experience, but about the broader implications of his crimes. Marcus Rothwell didn't just steal patents, I said, looking directly at him. He stole dreams, destroyed trust, and corrupted institutions meant to protect innovation. His actions harmed not only individual inventors, but society's progress toward solving important problems. Marcus received a sentence of 18 years in federal prison and was ordered to pay $47 million in restitution to his victims. 3 federal judges implicated in the conspiracy were impeached and removed from office. 17 corporate executives faced criminal charges for knowingly purchasing stolen intellectual property. The patent reform legislation inspired by my case, officially titled the Inventor Protection Act, became law 8 months after the congressional hearings. The new law created stronger penalties for patent theft, established independent review processes for suspicious ownership transfers, and provided federal funding for legal assistance to individual inventors. Speaking at the bill's signing ceremony, I reflected on the journey from Marcus's betrayal to meaningful reform. One person's decision to fight injustice can create ripple effects that protect thousands of others from similar harm. But that person must be willing to sacrifice comfort, privacy, and security to pursue justice. The quantum encryption technology that Marcus tried to steal became the foundation for a new generation of cybersecurity systems protecting everything from banking transactions to medical records. Knowing that my work was helping secure sensitive information for millions of people provided purpose beyond any financial reward. Janet's work with the FBI led to the discovery of patent theft networks in 12 states, resulting in over 200 arrests and the recovery of stolen intellectual property worth more than $3 billion. Her courage in exposing Marcus's crimes had protected countless inventors from similar betrayals. 1 year after the congressional hearings, I received a letter from a college student who had developed innovative battery technology. "I read about your case in my engineering ethics class," she wrote. "When a professor tried to claim ownership of my research, I knew what to do because of your example. Thank you for showing that fighting back is possible." Her letter reminded me why enduring public scrutiny and legal battles had been worthwhile. Marcus's betrayal could have destroyed my faith in mentorship and collaboration. Instead, it taught me that real leadership means protecting others from the exploitation you've experienced yourself. The woman who had trusted Marcus completely was gone forever. In her place stood someone who understood that trust must be earned through consistent actions, that power requires constant vigilance to prevent corruption, and that individual courage can overcome institutional failures when justice demands action. 2 years after Marcus's sentencing, I stood before a packed auditorium at Stanford University, delivering the keynote address at their annual Innovation and Ethics Symposium. The same institution where Marcus had first mentored me now hosted discussions about preventing the kind of betrayal he had attempted. Innovation requires trust, I told the audience of students, professors, and industry leaders, but trust without accountability becomes vulnerability. The key is learning to distinguish between mentors who genuinely support your success and those who view your achievements as opportunities for their own gain. In the front row sat 3 inventors whose patents had been recovered through evidence discovered in Marcus's case. Their presence reminded me that fighting one injustice had prevented dozens of others from suffering similar theft. After my speech, a young graduate student approached with familiar eagerness. "Professor Chen, I'm developing new solar panel technology that could revolutionize renewable energy. Would you be willing to review my patent applications to ensure they're properly protected?" The title still felt strange. Stanford had offered me an endowed chair in engineering ethics, allowing me to teach while continuing my encryption research. The position let me share practical knowledge about protecting intellectual property while inspiring the next generation of inventors to pursue their dreams responsibly. "I'd be happy to help," I told her. "But first, let me introduce you to Janet Walsh, our foundation's executive director. She can provide comprehensive guidance about patent protection and help you avoid the mistakes I made." Janet had become one of the nation's leading experts on corporate fraud prevention, testifying regularly before Congress and advising international organizations about intellectual property theft. Her transformation from Marcus's enabler to justice advocate inspired others to speak out against corruption in their own industries. That evening, Tom and I attended a reception celebrating the 5th anniversary of the Inventor Protection Act. Congresswoman Martinez, who had shepherded the legislation through both houses, spoke about the law's impact on protecting individual inventors. Since this law took effect, patent theft prosecutions have increased by 400%, while the rate of successful theft has declined by 60%, she announced. Individual inventors now have meaningful legal protections, thanks to one person's courage to fight an injustice that everyone else accepted as inevitable. The statistics represented thousands of inventors whose dreams remained intact because someone had challenged a corrupt system. Each protected patent meant continued innovation, job creation, and progress toward solving important problems. Dr. Sarah Brennan, now director of the Patent Office's Fraud Investigation Division, presented data showing the broader impact of increased enforcement. We've identified and stopped patent theft operations in 37 states, protecting intellectual property worth over $12 billion. The message is clear: stealing patents is no longer a low-risk, high-reward crime. Marcus's network had been completely dismantled, but new forms of intellectual property theft continued emerging. Our foundation adapted by providing education about emerging threats and supporting inventors facing novel forms of exploitation. 6 months later, I received news that would have seemed impossible during those dark days when Marcus was stealing my patent. The National Academy of Engineering elected me to membership based on contributions to cybersecurity and inventor advocacy. The honor recognized not just my technical achievements, but also my efforts to protect other innovators from systematic exploitation. At the induction ceremony, I reflected on the journey from betrayed student to national advocate. Engineering is ultimately about solving problems that improve human life, I said in my acceptance speech. Sometimes the most important problems are social and legal rather than technical. Creating systems that protect innovation is as crucial as creating the innovations themselves. Tom, now a federal prosecutor specializing in intellectual property crimes, had used skills developed during my case to build a career protecting other inventors. Our shared experience fighting Marcus's conspiracy had strengthened our relationship beyond what I could have imagined possible. Janet's daughter graduated from law school with plans to specialize in patent law, inspired by her mother's transformation from corporate employee to justice advocate. "You showed me that it's never too late to start doing the right thing," she told Janet during the graduation party we hosted at our new home. The house we had purchased with proceeds from the TechGlobal licensing deal included a state-of-the-art laboratory where I continued developing quantum encryption applications. But more importantly, it provided space for hosting inventor support groups and foundation board meetings. 5 years after Marcus's arrest, I published a book about the experience titled "The Patent Thief: How One Betrayal Exposed Systematic Corruption." The royalties funded scholarship programs for inventors from underrepresented communities, ensuring that economic barriers wouldn't prevent the next generation from pursuing breakthrough innovations. Speaking at a book launch event, I addressed questions about whether I regretted trusting Marcus or wished I had handled the situation differently. "Betrayal by someone you trust is devastating," I acknowledged. "But it also reveals strengths you never knew you possessed." I learned that fighting for justice requires courage, persistence, and faith that truth will ultimately prevail over corruption. A young inventor in the audience asked the question I had been expecting: "How do you trust anyone after being betrayed so completely?" "You learn to verify trust through actions rather than words," I replied. "You build relationships gradually with people who demonstrate integrity consistently over time. Most importantly, you remember that one person's betrayal doesn't invalidate the goodness of everyone else you'll meet." The quantum encryption technology that Marcus tried to steal became the foundation for secure communication systems used by governments, hospitals, and financial institutions worldwide. Knowing that my work protected sensitive information for millions of people provided purpose beyond any personal satisfaction. Janet's efforts to reform corporate whistleblower protections resulted in stronger legal safeguards for employees who reported fraud. Her courage in exposing Marcus's crimes had inspired similar bravery throughout the business community. As I concluded my remarks that evening, I looked out at an audience filled with inventors, entrepreneurs, and advocates working to build a more just innovation ecosystem. The greatest victory isn't recovering what was stolen from you, I said. It's ensuring that others never face similar theft because you had the courage to fight back when fighting seemed impossible. The applause that followed wasn't just recognition of my personal story. It was acknowledgement that individual actions could create institutional change when justice demanded courage over comfort. Marcus remained in federal prison, his appeals exhausted, and his reputation destroyed. But his greatest punishment wasn't imprisonment. It was knowing that his attempts at theft had inspired reforms that would protect thousands of inventors for generations to come. Standing on that stage 5 years after his betrayal nearly destroyed my life, I realized that fighting injustice had given me something more valuable than any patent or financial success. It had shown me that ordinary people could overcome powerful institutions when they refused to accept corruption as inevitable. The young woman who had trusted Marcus completely was gone forever. In her place stood someone who understood that trust properly earned and carefully verified remained the foundation of all meaningful innovation and collaboration. Thank you for joining me on this journey from betrayal to justice. Have you ever faced a situation where someone you trusted completely betrayed that trust? How did you find the courage to fight back? And what did the experience teach you about standing up for what's right? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help others find inspiration in the power of fighting injustice. Subscribe to our channel for more stories about ordinary people who refuse to let powerful institutions destroy their dreams. Share this video with anyone who might be facing their own David versus Goliath battle. And remember that sometimes the most important thing we can do is stand up when everything seems lost. Until next time, keep innovating, keep fighting for justice, and never let anyone convince you that your dreams are worthless. Together, we can build a world where creativity and courage triumph over corruption and greed.